In today's photo deconstruction, I'm going to take you behind the scenes of a fashion editorial with beautiful golden light that I shot while on location in Milan. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here. This past year, I put on a fashion intensive workshop in Milan. I teamed up with photographer Chris Knight to shoot an incredible palace with beautiful wardrobes, stunning models. And when I shoot with another photographer, when I shoot with Chris and we teach a workshop, one of the things that we love to demonstrate is how we can shoot a similar location, similar model, similar styling, but achieve two totally different results. And so for this workshop, I wanted to create something that was golden, sunny, dramatic, and this is the image that I came up with. And I really love the results. So what I want to do is I want to take you behind the scenes and show you how I used the lights, what modifiers, where they were placed, what was achieved in camera, and what was achieved in post-processing. So let's actually begin with the lighting. Here's a picture behind the scenes. Now, by the way, in this small group workshop, what we did is each room had a different theme. We had one model, and we'd leave 3 or 4 lights there and an assistant with 3 or 4 photographers. And then we'd give the opportunity to each photographer to move or adjust the lights in order to achieve the shot that fit their vision. All right, so for this room, what I was thinking is I looked around, I analyzed the space, and I said, okay, as I look around this, how does it make me feel? I loved the gold everywhere. Gold on the walls and the gilding above and the gilding and the gold of the chandelier. Everything was so rich and golden. I said, I want to lean into this. I want to emphasize this. And so I decided to reinforce that with golden light. But if I just made all the light warm, if I added CTOs, color temperature orange to everything, the shot would just look yellow and not really make sense. So instead, I thought it would be best to emulate the look of golden sunlight coming through a window at the end of the day. And so that takes us to our first and most important strobe, which you see over here on the left, which is an optical spot. An optical spot is a modifier that allows you to put gobos, go between optics, different shapes. You can put shapes into it and project it upon the scene. So I placed a window gobo in the optical spot, and I used a wider lens to allow it to project across the entire wall. So you can see the distance, and you can see how that window gobo kisses across the room. I then defocused the lens so it wouldn't be really, really sharp, because if it had sharp edges, I didn't think that the shadow and the light was quite as believable. So my very first modifier was an optical spot with a window gobo, and then to give me the golden light look, I added a CTO, an orange gel in front of it to make everything really, really warm. So that is light number 1. But when I added just that single strobe, the entire room was getting lost. In other words, it was just kind of dark. I was losing some of the gilding. Everything got really, really heavy and dramatic. But if you look at sunset light, usually when light comes through a window, it's bouncing around the entire space, and so it lifts up the shadows. So I needed something to bring back detail in the shadows, which is our second light over here on the left-hand side, which is a shoot-through umbrella. I had the light pointed so that it would bounce into the corner of the room, spread out everywhere, and instead of having a direction, all it would do is just lift up the light. It was main goal, was just to fill in the shadows. On that one as well, I had a very thin CTO, a CTO 1/4 stop. All right, so far we have 2 strobes. We have our main light with the window gobo to give the overall illumination to the room. Then I have a shoot-through umbrella to bounce off of the wall and the ceiling to fill in and lift up the shadows. And then finally we have our third strobe, which is a 5-degree grid with a 1/4 stop CTO. The whole point of this light is just to point the viewer's eye back at the face, just to make the face a little brighter, have a little bit more contrast. Often what I find is that if I'm using just the optical spot to light a space, everything is relatively evenly lit, and so the eye might get pulled to the corner or pulled to the back wall because it's lighter. But by adding that 5-degree grid to the face, it tells the viewer where to look. So I have 3 strobes and a lot of control over the light in the scene. And before we move on to see what was captured, let's take a look at the gear. I was shooting with the Canon R5 and the Canon RF 24-105 lens. I was shooting at f4 ISO 400. Now, for this room, and because I'm using these strobes that sometimes will eat a lot of light, like an optical spot at a long distance needs a lot of output, you'll notice that I was shooting at ISO 400 f4, but I could have easily bumped up to ISO 800, even 1000, and the image would still be clean. Now on a 24 to 105, 4.0 is the widest aperture, but if I had my 24 to 70, I might have opened up to 2.8. That way I wouldn't have to be shooting my strobe at its highest power, which of course then can overheat a light if you're shooting too often at full power. So here's the scene. Now let's take a look at what was captured in camera. So this is what it looked like with 0 adjustments, no changes whatsoever. And so you can see what each light is doing. We have the window gobo that hits my subject and a little bit on the wall behind her. Then you can see the illumination that's on the ceiling and also filling in the floor. That's that shoot-through umbrella. And then finally, you can see that there's some direction to the light on her face, which is a little bit more white, the color of light, and it's a little bit higher contrast, so it directs the viewer's eye. This is straight out of camera, and you can see how warm it is, even though I didn't use a warm or white balance because I was using the CTO gels. So far so good, but let me tell you what I'm analyzing in this shot. So as I look at it, I feel like my eye is being drawn to the left-hand side of the frame. It's a little bit too light. I also think that I've lost the green of the dress. I think that I could bring back some detail because I was using CTOs and warm light. I think some of the richness of the green got washed out. I also think that I could maybe make everything a little bit more rich, a little bit more sunset tone. So let me show you where I ended up with the final shot. This is what I ended up with. And so what you'll notice is I darkened down the edges. I made the light on the background more yellow. I made the green of her dress greener. And I put kind of a glowing highlight on the center of the frame. So what I want to show you is I did this retouch. I didn't outsource it because I didn't have that much to do. Instead, I did it all because it was mostly just playing with light and tone and playing around with color. So I'm going to take you over into Capture One and show you the image. So this is what it was straight out of camera, and this is what I did in Capture One. I just want to show you some of the pieces of the equation. One of the things I did is I went in and I individually lightened and darkened certain areas of the frame. So for example, I darkened down the entire left-hand side of the frame, and I just used a gradient and exposure. Next, I went in and I thought that the chandelier looked a little bit too yellowy, so I warmed that up just a little bit so it was glowing a tiny bit more. And then you'll see that I went in and individually painted on the green just to brighten that up, bring the color back in. So some other adjustments that you can see as I scroll down here is you can see that I added clarity, which added a lot of detail, a huge amount of detail back into the frame. And then I also added a vignette, which made a huge difference in bringing the viewer's eye to the center of the subject. So you can really see that a lot of this effect was achieved in Capture One. Now, one more thing is color grading. And by the way, if you join learnwithlindsay.com and you join Learn Plus, which is my monthly subscription platform, every month I shoot with a different theme. And you watch over my shoulder as I'm shooting, and I show you how I color grade and how I process the images. So here I added warmth to the highlights, and I added a little bit of magenta to the shadows, which gave a painterly and sunset look. In Learn Plus, I walk you through this step by step every month and for each of my setups. So let's go back and look at the final photo. So this is what was in camera. This was the final product. You can see hardly any of it was retouching. Most of it was processing and color grading. I love the results of this shoot, and if you do too and you want to join me, definitely check out learnwithlindsay.com and visit the events and workshops section. Every year I host many intensive workshops, and I host a few abroad in incredible locations like this one, but they always sell out super fast, so you're definitely going to want to save your space if you want to join me. I hope you've enjoyed this photo deconstruction. Of course, I have so many more just like this one, so be sure to like and subscribe. See you next time, guys.